So one of the most important things to understand in turkey hunting is you have to be where they want to go or where they're willing to go in order to have a chance to be successful. So understanding their travel patterns throughout the course of the season can be really important. Now, early in the season, you have to consider what their food sources are. All right, so they're going to have things like mass crops like acorns. They're going to be really important. They're still going to be feeding on things that were left over from the fall and winter mass crops. And so early in the season, you may find turkeys in things like hardwood drains or river bottoms, things like that, where there's a lot of mass crop available. If you're in places like the Midwest, you may have things like grains that were left over, waste grain in fields. That may be where turkeys are earlier in the year. Now you have to think, as the breeding cycle progresses, hens are really the ones that are leading those gobblers to areas that they want to be, close to nesting cover, because that's going to be their primary function right then, is being bred and going and having a successful nest to continue the proliferation of that species. And so later on in the year, as that breeding cycle ramps up and they need to be closer to nesting, you may need to consider areas that have a little bit better nesting cover. It may be shrubs, it may be grasses and forbs that are kind of waist high. That's going to be areas that turkeys are going to be at least near to carry out their breeding cycle and then go off in a close proximity and have their nest. Now, something to consider if you're in a more arid terrain or a place that water's a big issue, like Texas is, a lot of times those turkeys will have these roosts in which they'll be in kind of an oak grove or things like that, and there'll be 40, 50 turkeys roosted on one roost. When they hit the ground, they're trying to find not only food but water. And so understanding the bird's needs throughout the year and what food sources are available for them really is going to dictate their travel, as well as when you get into the breeding cycle, and nesting cover and the proximity to it is really important.
Another difference what you'll find with the subspecies is basically their breeding and nesting behavior as far as the time range goes. And for example, we'll take the eastern United States. In South Florida, you will see some breeding type behavior that as early as late January and into February. During the youth seasons of Florida that I've hunted, they are in full bore, ready to breed mode, the gobblers are. And as you move further north, for example, into states like Mississippi, into states like South Carolina, North Carolina, go and further up the eastern range, that takes place later, more so in April. And then you get to the very end of the northern range, say Maine, say Ontario, a lot of your best hunting is going to take place in mid to late May, where the breeding cycle takes place. So it really depends on your latitude as far as your timing, as far as your hunting's concerned. So I love to get the first crack at wild turkeys at my favorite place to hunt, which is South Florida. And then I love to chase them throughout the spring, all the way into states like New York and provinces like Ontario. The later in the spring, the better the hunting typically is up north as the seasons in the south end.